Okay, today we're moving on to 9.3, completing the square. So this is yet another way to solve quadratic equations, but it combines what we just did in the last section. So what we have to remember from chapter 7, I believe, is something like this. It's called a perfect square trinomial, and our goal today is going to be to get those perfect square trinomials. So if you remember, this is a perfect square, this is a perfect square. So if you took the square root of both of them, you take the middle sign. Remember, if you multiply and double, you get that number. That's what you want. So you want something all squared equals another number. So from here, we can just take the square root of both sides, and then I'm just gonna round to 2.2. So you would set x plus 3 equal to 2.2, and then x plus 3 equals negative 2.2. Subtract 3 all the way across, so you would get x equals negative 0.8 or negative 5.2. Okay, so if you have a perfect square trinomial, you can do what we did last section. So we're gonna have to create those perfect square trinomials because they're not gonna be done for us. So these are the 3 steps. They're the same steps every single time. So remember, when you have a trinomial, it's ax squared plus bx plus c. So b is in front of x. So you're gonna take b and you're gonna divide b by 2. You're then gonna square it, and then you're gonna add it to the end. That becomes your c. Okay, so pause that, write those steps down. So if you take, for number 1, negative 12, divide it by 2, you get negative 6. Square it, you get 36. So your perfect square trinomial would be this. And from before, we should remember that you take x, you take 6, take the middle term and square it. So this would be your answer. C is 36. Same thing here. Take negative 9, divide by 2. I'm just gonna leave it as a fraction because then it's not even. Square it, you get 81 over 4. That is our C. So our trinomial becomes y squared minus 9y plus 81 over 4. Same thing for 3. You take 20, divide it by 2. You get 10. Square it, you get 100. That's your C. So your perfect square trinomial that you would use to factor this is that. It's asking you just to find C. So this is your C, but that's the whole perfect square trinomial. So make sure you get all of those down. Now, we're gonna use that whole process to solve equations this way. So the very first thing you need to do is isolate or get them alone. So you're gonna isolate x squared and x. You cannot have a coefficient for x squared. So you're gonna have to divide that out if you have something. You cannot have an a. A must be 1. You're then going to complete the square. And that's what we did up here. All these 3 examples. Then you're going to add c to both sides because remember, it's an equation. So whatever you do to the left, you have to do to the right, okay? Make sure you get those steps down. So for number 1, or number 4, we want to get x squared and x by itself. So the very first step is you're going to subtract 5 from both sides. So now we have x squared minus 18x. I'm going to leave a little space, equals negative 17. So the first step is done. I isolated x squared and x. X squared is by itself, we're good. Then we're going to complete the square. So we're going to take b. We're going to divide it by 2, and we're going to square it. So negative 18 divided by 2 is negative 9. You square it, you get 81. So that's my C. That's step 2. Step 3 is to add c to both sides. So we're going to add 81 here and add 81 here. We want to keep that equation level. Now you should have a perfect square trinomial here. You take the square root of x squared, you take the square root of 81, you take that middle sign, equals, and then 81 minus 17 is 64. All of that work leads us to what 9.2 was. Take the square root of both sides, so x minus 9 equals 8, and then x minus 9 equals negative 8. Add 9, so you get x equals 17 and x equals 1. So if you plug those back in there, that would work. Okay? Take a minute and absorb that. Go back through each step. Number 5. C squared and c are alone, so we are good. But we're going to take b. We're going to divide it by 2, and we're going to square it. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3, so you get 9. We're going to add that 9 to both sides, so it's the same process all the time. So now I created a perfect square trinomial. Take the square root, and the minus sign. Take the square root of both sides. C minus 3 equals 4. C minus 3 equals negative 4. Add 3 all around. So you get 7 or negative 1. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna do the back. Slide this in between my cracker boxes. We're good to go. Okay, so we have r squared and r by themselves, so we're good. So we take b, divide by 2, and square it. So you get negative 2 squared, so you get 4. You're gonna add that 4 to both sides. You now have a perfect square trinomial. You take those square roots, the middle sign, and square it. Take the square root of both sides. You get r minus 2 equals. Now this isn't a perfect square, so we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So r minus 2 equals 2.4. R minus 2 equals negative 2.4. Okay, so you're going to add 2. And 2. So you're going to get r equals 4.4, or when you do this math, you get negative 0.4. Okay. Number 7 is a pain. So is number 8. Well, 8's not that bad. 7's bad because you have fractions all over the place and it becomes a little bit of a nightmare. Let's look at 8. So you throw a stone with upward velocity, so you have your function there. When does the stone land in the water? So we know when it lands somewhere, your height is always 0. Okay, so now you want to get t squared and t by itself. So you can divide by negative 16 first if you want. So you get 0 equals t squared minus 3t minus 1. So now you want to get t squared and t by itself. So you're going to add that 1 to both sides. Here's where we get a little fraction here. You're going to take that negative 3, that b, divide it by 2, and square it. So you're going to get 9 over 4. 9 over 4, 9 over 4. Okay, so you have 2 and 1/4 plus 1, so this is 3 and 1/4. And then per square root, the square root, just do, it's whatever you had here before you squared it. So the square root is 3 and 2. And then the last step is to take the square root of both sides. So you're going to get t minus 3 over 2 equals 3 1/4. Well, you have to find the square root of that, right? So the square root of that's about 1.8. And then plus and minus. So you do t minus 3 over 2 equals 1.8. T minus 3 over 2 equals negative 1.8. And when you do that math, you will get, when you do this math here, you're going to get 3.3. When you do this math here, you're going to get a negative, I believe it's negative 0.3. You can't have a negative seconds, so you keep that one there. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here. Your assignment for today and tomorrow, I'm going to have you guys finish 9, 10, and 11, and then upload those notes. So by tomorrow at 2:30, I guess, have these notes filled out. Don't worry about 7 because we did everything else. And then 10, 11, and 12, I want you to finish those up and take a picture and upload. I'll put a spot for you to upload. When you upload it, don't upload a tiny picture. I need to see your work so I can make sure it's okay. Okay? All right, have a good day.